goals as an industry. That is why we want to continue our discussion and learn more about what destinations are doing and their progress they are making towards responsible travel. It looked like he was having way too much fun up here, so I'm happy to welcome Graham Jackson back up to the stage to lead our discussion with some of the top destination organizations. We'll hear what they're doing along with some of the obstacles they have faced as they work towards a sustainable travel. So welcome, Graham.
Thank you. Did you miss me?
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon to everyone here, also tuning in at home, and those watching again. We're going to shift our focus now to destinations, and we're going to hear from two quite inspirational destinations that have been on their own sustainability journey, who are going to share with us a little bit about what they've been going through, how they've been evolving as a destination, really trying to balance the needs of the visitor with those of the destination, of its communities. Seeking ways of maintaining the economic and social advantages of tourism, but trying to extenuate any of those negative impacts that we've heard about in terms of climate, in terms of over-tourism and so forth. So I'm delighted to be joined by Malcolm Roughead, who's the CEO of VisitScotland. And he's going to be talking a little bit about how they've been engaging, educating, and consulting with their stakeholders and setting clear goals for tourism. And also extremely pleased to be joined from Hawaii by Aliha Gionson, who's the Public Affairs Officer of the Hawaiian Tourism Authority. I'm glad I pronounced your name correctly there, Aliha. Okay, so let's start with you both just introducing yourselves to the audience and just sharing a little bit, just a few minutes maybe each, on how you are trying to balance those needs of the visitor with those of your communities and how you're managing the impacts of tourism at the destination level. Let's first go to you, Malcolm.
Thank you very much indeed, and good evening, and also good morning, should I say, to Leah. I think from my perspective, I've been with VisitScotland now started as the chief executive, and for us, the whole issue of responsible tourism, it's not an adjunct, it's not a line in a corporate plan, it's actually the essence of what we believe in. And just to give you a little bit of context, because obviously we'll come a bit later to what we're actually doing on the ground, but I think it was mentioned earlier that the Scottish Government had a target for net zero by 2045, and that includes a 75% reduction in carbon emissions by 2030. Back in February 2019, just prior to COVID, the Outlook Scotland 2030 strategy for Scottish tourism launched. And at the heart of that strategy was very much a focus on responsible tourism. And the vision around all of that was fairly straightforward. It was to be a leader within 21st century tourism. And if I kind of unpack that, what it really means is Scotland would be recognised globally for responsible and sustainable tourism. That was then, and I think it's been mentioned before, amplified at the 6th summit in Glasgow, which allowed us to do a number of things. One was obviously promote Scotland as a low-carb destination, but also it was to work with others, partners, visitors, with the industry, to inspire, engage, and inform the industry through webinars, through our conversations, and provoke us collectively into reassessing our collective and individual carbon footprint. So in essence, what we're trying to do, and I think it's fairly straightforward and always good to keep things as simple as possible, what we're actually trying to do is protect and enhance our communities and assets. And doing that, what we do is we create better places in which to live, work, and also to visit. So I'll kind of stop there because I'll go much into more detail around what Visit Scotland as an organisation has been doing.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. Over to you, Aliha. Could you tell us a little bit about your journey in Hawaii and how you're trying to achieve that balance in your destination?
Mahalo for that, Graham. And Malcolm, I could take everything you said and just apply it to us, and it wouldn't be that far off. You know, once upon a time, Hawaii was a land where people lived in a very delicate balance with nature, making sure that everything that people needed was produced within a pretty small geographic space. Traditional land management practices made sure that everybody had enough, nobody went hungry. And over time, we went away from that. As it became easier to import things, it became easier to get what you need from somewhere else. It just threw everything off balance. And so fast forward a little bit to the beginning of the visitor industry as we know it now, it was at a scale where people were really hosted in the Hawaiian cultural tradition of hospitality. And over time, that shifted to a scale where it was more of the industrialized tourism that was not part of our cultural practice. And so what you ended up seeing was the priority going to the guest, not to the host, not to the place, but the needs of the guest prioritized above all else. And so our recent efforts at the Hawaii Tourism Authority, we're seeking to bring that balance back to make sure that the needs of the place that's in the community, in the local culture, in the natural resources, make sure that those were protected, preserved, and reinvested in. Because at the end of the day, at the Hawaii Tourism Authority, our job is to protect the Hawaii brand. And what is the Hawaii brand without our beautiful natural resources, without our local culture, and without the strong community? And so that's kind of the focus of our efforts as of late, going so far as to invite visitors to join us in stewarding and caring for Hawaii, learning to love it the way that we do here. So mahalo for having me.
Thank you. Maybe I'll just just to ask you to expand a little bit on that, because I know that Hawaii has been hitting the headlines recently. Globally, there has been many discussions around this sort of respect and value that needs to be achieved from tourism. Can you talk us through just a little bit about how you're looking at KPIs differently? Because you and I had a fascinating conversation about this the other day, and I think it's a story that needs to be shared. And also maybe just touch a little bit on what that means for your product moving forwards.
No, thanks for that, Graham. Like many DMOs, our KPIs used to have to do with arrivals, used to have to do with hotel nights, right? These kinds of easy to measure metrics. We know how many people land, we know how many nights they stay in a hotel. But when we think about the economic benefits of tourism and what that really means for a community, how do you measure those finer things? So that's a journey that we're still on. One thing we did was we stripped away some of the KPIs that perhaps didn't advance what our community was calling for us to really do here in the business of hospitality. And so our 4 KPIs adopted as part of a strategic plan that I'll go back to in a sec. No more visitor arrivals as a KPI, but rather per person per day spending, total visitor spending, visitor satisfaction to reflect the high quality of product and service that we provide, and most importantly, perhaps, resident sentiment. How do residents feel about the industry? How do residents feel about the way the industry is being managed? We've been measuring the baseline since 1988. It gives us a really long tail of data. And, we adjust as time goes on, but at the core, the question is, does tourism bring more benefits than challenges? And it's been pretty close to half-half the whole time we've been doing this. So certainly a lot of work to do. And, always open to learn, to grow. On top of all of that, in 2014, Hawaii adopted the Aloha Plus Challenge, which predated the Sustainable Development Goals by a little over a year. That was our local framework to implement some of the changes that we needed to achieve some of our sustainability goals by 2030. And so baking that into our strategic plan was an important part. Sort of these bigger KPIs that aren't directly hospitality related, but certainly hospitality needs to be a part of getting there.
Thank you. So going back to Malcolm now, just before the pandemic, you launched your new tourism strategy, and I'm sure, I'm sure it was, none of us were anticipating quite that shock. And in that document, Outlook 2030, you promised a bold new approach that will see tourism act positively in the common interests of Scotland's communities, businesses, and everyone who visits and stays with us. So what's that meant for your organisation? First of all, maybe, have you maintained that, maintained sort of interest and commitment to that strategy through quite a difficult time? And also, how might that have changed your own business, your own organisational priorities, the resources that you have, and the activities that you do?
Yeah, I think the short answer is actually COVID has managed to amplify the need for responsible tourism. So what we've actually found is that certainly attitudinally, people are right behind the drive to sort of reducing the carbon emissions. I think behaviourally is the biggest challenge that we all face, given the current economic climate that we find ourselves in, and various other barriers in terms of investment, labour shortages, etc. But for us, it helped shape our planning, and we came up with 4 priorities, and one was obviously about being part of the bigger picture in terms of the visitor economy contributing to the low carbon targets that the government had set. There was also making sure that we reflected accessibility and social inclusion. Our view is that tourism is everyone's business. It's there for everyone to enjoy and to be part of. And there's a lot of work that we've been doing and accelerating on in terms of making sure that people from communities that perhaps wouldn't be able to financially enjoy the benefits of a short break or a day trip, that they can actually be part, not just of the experience, but also part of the solution. We're also looking at how working with other partners that we have in Scotland, how we can support our natural and cultural heritage, and that includes language as much as anything else. And also making sure that we do a lot in terms of events, major events, but also national events, and making sure that they are community focused, that the communities feel part of that, and that they feel that they own tourism as opposed to having tourism done to them. And that to us is a very, very important aspect of the strategy going forward. In terms of our own activity, from a marketing perspective, if we just take that quickly, the overarching theme that we have is Scotland is calling. But the key message for us, for any visitors coming, was about tread lightly. So respect, protect, and enjoy the environment that you're going into. And that also was amplified by the focus that we have on regionality and geographic spread. You've probably seen over the last couple of years that the hotspots got hotter. And of course, that then means that you have an inequality in terms of the benefits of tourism being spread around the whole country. So we've been encouraging people around slow travel. And a good example of that was we introduced the world's first national Unesco trail, which brought together all the Scotland's Unesco place-based designations. So that was the World Heritage Sites, Global Geoparks, biospheres, and creative cities. And that's been a huge amount of work, but been incredibly successful. But as I said, we have to work with industry as well, hand in hand. So we've developed, trade-ready, responsible resources, looking at bookable itineraries, helping people to get online. We've also been looking at local businesses in terms of helping them to encourage longer stays, because it goes back to the point that was made. For us, it's about value, not necessarily about volume. We've also been looking at, very much around the visitor management aspect. So during the COVID period, we pulled together what I call a sort of coalition of the willing, which were various local authorities, government agencies, and industry. And that was really to support communities and improve the infrastructure, so that we would invest money into, it's called the Rural Tourism Infrastructure Fund. And that allowed us to invest money into projects that took into account access or visitor facilities, waste management, low carbon forms of transport. And on top of that, of course, we need to communicate that to visitors and make them feel part of that solution. We've also been, as you'll be well aware, heavily involved in terms of Destination Net Zero. And we've been looking at the Nation Climate Action Plan. We have a pilot running at the moment in conjunction with a number of areas in Scotland with the Travel Foundation. Thank you very much. And that gives advice and support to destinations on how to operate and implement a climate action plan. And a number of areas, they vary. So Glasgow, big city area, to the Outer Hebrides, beautiful islands, and to Inverness and Loch Ness. That particular area was voted one of the top 100 green destinations. In fact, it was the only one in the UK that was voted within the top 100. Hospitality Zero is another project that's up and running, and that's a pilot that's running in Glasgow to look at reducing food waste. We've also introduced an electric vehicle charge point fund, and our target there was to look at just over 100 businesses or 100 charge points, and we're currently running at 194 charge points having been installed with businesses. And then the final aspect for that really was looking at a sustainable tourism certification scheme. And this was a fund that allowed businesses a £500 voucher to sign up and to go through an analysis by experts on just how green they were and what they could do to reduce not just their emissions, but also to look at how they could reduce costs. So there's been quite a lot of activity in that particular.
Thank you, Malcolm. I mean, I think we can probably tell from that being a DMO is no longer just about marketing a destination. Some really great efforts going on there in Scotland. I'm going to turn now to Hawaii again, and just ask you a little bit to maybe expand on what do you see the risks, the biggest future risks are to Hawaii, to its communities, to tourism there, and maybe just to, as a second question, just to follow straight on from that, you've got the floor here in front of a global audience of operators, and I'd really love you to just engage them and maybe just have them. What would you like to say to them? How can they support you as a destination with your goals? How can they help you avoid some of those risks? What would you like them to start, stop, continue doing to be good partners to Hawaii? Thank you.
Appreciate the question, Graham. Funny enough, I think the biggest risk and the biggest opportunity for Hawaii has to do with climate. The biggest risk is that So much of our visitor industry infrastructure was built around this idea of being a sand, surf, and sun destination. So many of the resorts are right on the water. And with climate change, rising sea levels, and all the other things, we're going to have some challenges with the built infrastructure of the visitor industry. Yesterday, I was at an event at a hotel that is right on the shoreline. It's 30 something stories high. Um, at some point, that's going to be a big challenge. Sort of the spiritual and nerve center of our visitor industry is Waikiki, which was once wetlands. And so that's going to be an interesting challenge with climate change. The opportunity with climate is in the human climate of the world. We pride ourselves, for over 100 years, we've talked about being the land of aloha, of mutual respect, of understanding, of caring and love. We're growing that message today. You'll see in a lot of our things we talk about malama. Malama is the Hawaiian value to care for, to nurture, and to protect. We are going to malama those things that we aloha. In today's climate around the world, and you see it in the news, I won't rehash it here, but how do we remember to aloha each other? How do we remember to malama each other? I think that's Hawaii's opportunity, and frankly, Hawaii's responsibility to the world is to be that place that nurtures that spirit. You can come, recharge, rejuvenate, and return to your home with a better sense of, frankly, your responsibility to humanity. And I know I'm getting kind of big for DMO here, but that's, that's kind of where our thinking is headed. To all of you, operators in the room, I think a lot of the day-to-day challenges that we have, around hotspots, around the undiscovered Hawaii becoming quite a bit more accessible in the age of social media, various websites and guides and things like that. But a lot of those are people trying to see something that they don't know how to see. When they link up with a responsible operator such as all of you in the room, they can go and see those things without trespassing, without going into environmentally sensitive areas, without trampling on native species, and without disturbing communities. And so, we have different certifications available in Hawaii, sustainable tourism. We're working on a tour operator licensing framework, figuring out how to do that incorporates all of the best practices, things like cultural training. Our partners at the Native Hawaiian Hospitality Association have been offering that for a couple of decades now. And so we encourage everybody to participate in those trainings and really learn. But at the end of the day, when you visit a place, you visit because you've had an invitation. And going back to the Hawaiian cultural framework of hospitality, when you arrive, you announce your intent. The host invites you in, right? It's not a come and free for all and do whatever you want. And so in a lot of ways, responsible operators like yourselves act on behalf of the visitor to make those kinds of announcements and to make sure that you're being invited into a space properly. And so really appreciate all that you do. And at the Hawaii Tourism Authority, we're here to help. Please reach out anytime. I'll drop our website in the chat if that's helpful. I think somehow the attendees can see that.
Thank you very much. Well, we've got just 2 minutes left, so I'd just like to open the floor to you both, just to give you any final thoughts on this subject. Where would you like to, where would you like to be seeing this conversation moving in the next 5 years, let's say?
To you, Malcolm.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, for me, it's about momentum and it's about purpose. So we're all, every one of us are on a journey here. but the ultimate destination, I think we all agree upon. So there's no conflict in that. But we do have to recognise that we're not all starting from the same starting point. So we need to bring people along with us. We need to help those that need that little bit extra help. And collectively, I think if we share those common goals, and if the information, the data that's out there, then I'm absolutely certain that momentum will continue. I'm also certain that, and I think that was great, you know, the whole Hawaiian experience, and reminds me a little bit of what's going on in New Zealand as well with the Maori one. And, you know, to a certain extent in Scotland as well, our heritage, our culture is so important to who we are and where we come from and who we want to be, that it's up to us all to be able to experience it, but also to protect it, enjoy it, and make sure that it grows and continues to exist for the next few years, the next few decades, and next centuries.
Just a quick final thought from you as well, Aliha.
Oh, thank you. Quick last thought. When you visit a place, you are in somebody else's home. And I think for DMOs and for industry, it's important to remember that communities are no longer going to just be spectators to their future. And so the kind of community engagement, I didn't get to talk about it too much, but engaging with your community in the planning, in figuring out what are we doing, where are we going, is critical, because communities at the end of the day make the destination. So mahalo to all of you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you both.